man who was to become known as Count Rumford was born in 1753 in Woburn, Massachusetts.
After leaving school at 13, he continued to study, became a private tutor, and by the age of 19 had moved to Concord, New Hampshire, to run a school. Within 2 years, he had married a rich widow, met the governor of New Hampshire, become a major in the British Army, and fathered a daughter, Sarah. However, not all augured well. The Boston Tea Party had happened in December 1773, and when the British retreated from Boston in March 1776, Thomson left with them.
However, shortly after arriving in London, he continued his upward trajectory by introducing himself to Lord George Germain, Secretary of State for the Colonies, and it was at his house at Stoneland Lodge in Sussex,
beginning in July 1778, that he began experiments on gunpowder that would lead to him becoming a Fellow of the Royal Society. Lord George even arranged for Thomson a salaried post in government and a voyage on HMS Victory in 1779, where Thomson was able to spend 3 months studying cannon fire.
By 1780, George's position in government was decreasingly secure. After a short return to America as a regimental commander in the British Army, Thomson travelled to Europe in 1783 with a view to advance his military career in a European army. Soon he met Prince Maximillian of Zweibrücken, and with his help he moved to Munich,
where he was appointed to be aide-de-camp of the prince's uncle, the Elector of Bavaria. Thomson spent several years settling in, but used the time to carry out scientific investigations. Thus, in 1786, he described some instruments he called passage thermometers and used them to investigate the thermal conductivity of different materials by placing the materials in the filled globe of a passage thermometer. Then he placed the instrument first in boiling water and then in ice and monitored the change of temperature. He then used his results to redesign the uniform of the Bavarian army. But this was just the beginning of his reforms. He also built workhouses in which army uniforms were produced and soup kitchens to feed the poor and to keep the beggars off the street. But his most lasting labour for the city of Munich was the design of an extensive garden park, which is now known as the English Garden. By this time, however, he had already been knighted by King George III, and in Bavaria he had been ennobled as a count, with Thomson choosing the title Count Rumford from the old name of the New Hampshire town Concord.
However, one of his primary interests remained the efficient use of heat, and when he returned to England in the mid-1790s, published several essays on this topic, including one on his designs of efficient fireplaces, which became so famous that they became the subject of satirical cartoons. But his most famous work concerning heat was carried out when he returned again to Bavaria, and it involved another of his primary interests, cannons.
He had noticed that a lot of heat was given off when a cannon was bored, and built an instrument to measure the heat that was given off by allowing the heat to boil water. His conclusion that the supply of heat was continuous and inexhaustible as long as boring continued was one of the earliest proofs of the kinetic theory of heat. Another lasting legacy from Thomson was his founding of the Royal Institution in 1799 during another of his spells in Britain.
The institute got off to a good start. The young and charismatic Humphrey Davy was employed as a chemistry lecturer, and gave demonstrations of laughing gas in his lectures.
The lectures were very popular, as can be seen from this satirical cartoon in which Davy is holding the bellows and Rumford is looking on from the corner.
However, Thomson was still not content, and he spent much of the remainder of his life in Paris, first married to Marie-Anne Lavoisier, widow of the famous executed chemist Antoine Lavoisier, and after dissolution of the marriage with his daughter Sarah, his first marriage, whom he had become reacquainted with after the death of his first wife. Thank you so much for listening to the very end, and I hope to see you again sometime soon.